Enrollment requires compatible unlocked device and new line of service. Bonus device credit requires 12 months of active service. Offer ends if eligibility requirements are no longer met. Taxes and fees apply. For network management practices, see Straight Talk's terms and conditions.
Sweet chocolate reward. Sweet chocolate reward.
This is not just the sound of someone picking up a sweet treat at Walgreens. This is the sound of someone picking up a sweet treat right after receiving all their vaccines in one trip. This is the sound of treating yourself, because you protected yourself.
Stop by or schedule both your flu and COVID-19 vaccines today and grab yourself a sweet treat while you're at it. Vaccine subject to availability. State, age, and health-related restrictions may apply.
Emergency traffic now brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
A crash northbound I-15 in Weber County at 5600 South Roy has the right and left lanes blocked with emergency crews and the vehicles involved. It is causing stop-and-go delays into Clearfield. If you want to consider an alternate route, use Highway 89 up to I-84, then over to Riverdale at I-15. Celebrate Taco Tuesday the tasty way at Cafe Rio. Handmade tortillas bring the vibes, slow-braised meats bring the punch, and 12 tasty toppings bring the party, starting at just $2.49. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Warm and sunny in the valleys of the Wasatch Front all week long. Today's high 82, tomorrow up to 90, and right now 75 degrees with sunny skies. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Social Security is with you through life's journey from birth to retirement. As your life changes year to year, so do your needs. For over 80 years, Social Security has helped to meet your needs and is committed to improving access to the services that make a difference in your life. Today, you can verify your earnings, estimate your future benefits, apply for retirement, manage your benefits, and even change your address, all from the comfort of your home. Social Security's online services help put you in control with secure access to your information anytime, anywhere, allowing you to spend more time with family, friends, or simply just enjoying the day. Social Security, securing today and tomorrow. See what you can do online at socialsecurity.gov.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Over the years, you've brought them into your home. You were prescribed opioids after the C-section, when Dad injured his back, when your basketball star tore his ACL. Opioids helped with the pain, and you held on to them just in case. But did you know holding on to unused opioids puts your family at risk? Opioids are powerful pain-reducing prescription medicines, but most people who are prescribed opioids don't finish their prescriptions. So millions of unused opioids are sitting in homes across the country. And tragically, more than 100 Americans die every day from overdoses involving opioids. What can you do to protect your family? Remove the risk of unused opioids from your home. Pills, patches, or syrups in drawers, purses, and cabinets, anywhere they might be hiding. To find out how to dispose of them properly, visit www.fda.gov/drug disposal.
Most of us like to be out in the sun. That's why sunscreen and other safety measures are key to protecting your skin from aging and cancer. The FDA recommends using a sunscreen with a sun protection factor, or SPF, of 15 or higher. Also, look for broad spectrum on the label. That means both harmful ultraviolet A and B rays are blocked. UVA rays age the skin, UVB rays burn, and both cause cancer. But the perfect sunscreen doesn't count if you use it wrong. Don't need sunscreen on a cloudy day? Wrong. 80% of UV rays still get through the haze. Only use sunscreen at the beach? Nope. Anytime you're outside, UV rays attack the skin, so you need protection. And you have to reapply sunscreen every 2 hours. Remember, SPF plus broad spectrum equal healthy fun in the sun. Visit www.fda.gov/sunscreen for more information. A message from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Israel and Hezbollah have been escalating attacks between the northern border of Israel and the southern border of Lebanon. Fighting is intensifying, and some say that a wider war in the region is increasingly likely. U.S. troops are being deployed to the region. Of course, that risks direct U.S. involvement in another Middle Eastern war. The question beyond the headlines are, what are the paths to de-escalation, preventing regional war, and what really comes next in all of this? Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
As we look at what's happening in the Middle East, of course, it's changing by the moment as you have strikes and counterstrikes and everything happening there at the northern border. And we want to get beyond just the headlines of this and to really unpack what it is, what it means, and are we inevitably on the path to a wider war, or are there other paths that are still available? Mary Trimble, of course, is someone we always look to, editor of the Morning Dispatch based in Washington, D.C. And Mary, welcome back to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Boyd.
So as we look back and as you all started the day today, which is where we started our day today, was checking in with all of you, and we saw the pagers, the walkie-talkies, all of those things escalating. Where are we now, and what should we actually be watching kind of underneath the headlines in all of this?
So as you said, this new round of escalation really started last week. On Monday, the Israeli government added to its official war aims in its war against Hamas, which started on October 7th last year and then was quickly followed the next day by Hezbollah, beginning what have become daily cross-border attacks on northern Israel. The Israeli government added to those aims bringing the internally displaced Israelis who have fled the northern region back to their homes in the north. And so that means making that region safe for them. And then that announcement was quickly followed by these truly remarkable attacks on Hezbollah electronics. So Hezbollah has been moving away from cell phones as Israel has over the years picked off its leaders using data from those devices. And in fact, Israel had been planning for this attack for years, had laced these pagers, batteries with explosives, and killed more than a dozen people and injured thousands when they all simultaneously exploded on Tuesday. And that was followed up on Wednesday by another attack on walkie-talkies. Later in the week, there were Israeli strikes on a meeting of Hezbollah military leaders that killed one of the leaders of an elite force of Hezbollah. So since then, it has been this escalating back and forth, and Monday was really probably the most destructive day in this conflict in well over a decade, with lots of Israeli strikes on weapons arsenals in southern Lebanon.
Yeah, one of the things I've been anxious to ask you about is it seems that the Biden administration has sort of had a foreign policy of de-escalate anyway, anyhow, and make that de-escalation happen. And here Israel is clearly saying we're actually going to escalate in order to de-escalate. And it's a very different thing. And that puts the U.S. in an interesting position in all of this. Obviously, additional troops going to that region for a number of reasons. What do you make of all of that? And where does that put us in terms of the impact here at home?
Yeah, de-escalate or escalate to de-escalate is sort of the shorthand for what we have seen in the last week or so. And it's, as you say, kind of runs counter to where the Biden administration has been on this for the entirety of this year. And I was, talking to analysts and sources yesterday, and Israel wants Hezbollah to back down. They want this to become so painful for Hezbollah and sort of by extension Iran that really values Hezbollah's strength and ability to potentially take out Israel's defenses. They want this to be so painful for Iran's axis that it backs away. And, at the same time, if that doesn't happen, Hezbollah has still really threatened Israeli sovereignty. I mean, there's an entire portion of the country where Israelis cannot live.
Right.
And, the State Department has acknowledged that status quo is not tenable. So the Biden administration is really in a tough spot here.
Yeah.
There have been discussions ongoing for all of this year about a potential ceasefire agreement. I was on your show talking about it just a few weeks ago. And that is now internally, people in the Biden administration are saying this is unlikely to happen before President Biden leaves office. And so it's, I wish I had a better answer for your listeners, but really it's just a sticky situation, and it's not clear whether Hezbollah will step down the escalation ladder and decide that this has gotten too painful, and how the Biden administration will handle this.
Yeah, no question about that. And just real quickly, in our last 60 seconds here, Mary, I also wanted to ask you, you included this in your dispatch this morning, and that is the role of the Lebanese government in all this. This is like no one ever talks about them. How are they? We're talking about Hezbollah, we're talking about Israel, we're talking about Iran, and yet we're in Lebanon. And so give us just a 60-second snapshot of where does the Lebanese government fit into all of this?
Yeah, it's very uncomfortable for the Lebanese government. There is a political wing of Hezbollah that is part of the Lebanese government, but the Lebanese government is very fragile. They have been in an ongoing economic crisis for years, and they're sort of powerless to take on Hezbollah, which has just developed a massive and almost impenetrable infrastructure along the southern part of the country after the 2006 war, where the government never enforced what was supposed to be a demilitarized zone in the southern part of the country abutting the Israeli border. So we don't talk about the Lebanese government very often, and part of the reason is that they're sort of unwilling and unable to do anything about just Hezbollah in its southern region.
Great insight, great perspective. And Mary, we will keep coming back to you and all of our friends at the Dispatch. Mary Trimble's the editor of the Morning Dispatch based in Washington, D.C., and it's where you should start your morning is with the Dispatch. Mary, as always, thanks for your perspective and insight.
Thanks for having me.
All right, great perspective there. And this is one that is going to continue to be sticky and complicated and difficult, and we'll continue to break it down to get past the headline stuff and to get down to the real issues and the nuances of all of this, because that's where all of these things are going to be decided in the end. We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. In a big election year like this,
Trump called for a grand jury to investigate.
News happens fast.
Harris said she wants an assault weapons ban.
A significant paradigm shift for the Secret Service.
On the way to work, searching for lunch, or heading home, come here to catch up. We have you covered in the car at 102.7 FM.
When Dee and I built our new home, and it's almost been 10 years now, I think of all of the appliances that we put in that house, and I cannot tell you how many of them already we have had some major repairs and even replacements. You know the one thing that I haven't given a second thought to? It's the Connecticut soft water system. It is remarkable. We've had two systems in two different homes, and not once have we ever called with an issue to my friends at Connecticut. It's time for you to call Connecticut. If you're replacing an old system or if you're building a new home, whatever it might be, you will be amazed at how efficient the Connecticut soft water system is. For example, when your neighbor puts in 3 bags of salt in his or her system, you will be putting in only 1. It's remarkable how efficient it is. Give them a call. Great people to do business with. Call Northern Utah's authorized Connecticut dealer at 801-576-8600 or go to softwaterutah.com.
Are you within 5 years of filing for Social Security? Get this. 96% of Americans forfeit an average of $111,000 in Social Security income. And it's all because they filed for their benefits at the wrong time. Learn how you could avoid this with a free, customized Social Security analysis from Boss Retirement Solutions, 5-time winners of the Best of State Award. If you've saved more than $200,000 for retirement and have not filed for Social Security, Schedule your free analysis now by calling 801-896-9622. You know, for some people, filing for Social Security early could result in more net income in retirement. Discover how you could get the most income from Social Security. Call 801-896-9622. 801-896-9622.
Advisory services offered through Boss Retirement Advisors, an SEC registered investment advisory firm. Insurance products and services offered through Boss Retirement Solutions.
Mom, meet Sarah.
From first-time Nana moments.
And welcome to Flight 101.
To annual girls trip moments. Your can't-miss moments are worth protecting against RSV. If you're 75 or older or 60 plus with a chronic condition like asthma, COPD, heart disease, or severe diabetes, you're at higher risk of landing in the hospital from RSV. And there are no prescription RSV treatments. Check eligibility and schedule your RSV vaccine at vaxassist.com.
So where should we go next?
Sponsored by Pfizer.
Right now at Wendy's, you can get a small Frosty for $1. And literally everyone is going. The car behind you, going to get $1 Frosty. The car ahead of you, already had one, going for a second. The person who cut you off earlier, you guessed it, $1 Frosty. Maybe it's all a sign for you to go get one. Just don't cut anyone off. No one likes that person. The iconic Frosty for $1, gotta be Wendy's.
Limited time only at participating U.S. Wendy's. Not valid in a combo. Prices may be higher in Alaska, Hawaii, California, and via third-party delivery.
Mom and Dad used to argue about everything, especially about Dad's drinking. It drove me crazy. It got so bad, I couldn't do my homework. I couldn't concentrate. I absolutely refused to let any of my friends come to our house for any reason. I would have been humiliated if anyone found out how much my dad drank and how loud my mom screamed at him. My family went from totally crazy to quiet, calm, and even peaceful. The only thing that happened is my mom started going to Al-Anon family groups. Her relationship with my dad really changed. I asked Mom if she would take me to her Al-Anon meetings or to Alateen. I wanted to see if I could have a better relationship with my dad. I'm sure glad I did. If someone's drinking troubling you, you might be surprised at what you can learn in an Al-Anon or Alateen family group from people just like you. Call 1-888-4-ALANON or go to alanon.org.
At Social Security, we are always thinking of ways to save you time and make things easier. That's why we created My Social Security. Opening a My Social Security account gives you secure access to your personal record and interactive tools tailored for you. You can see if you are eligible to receive benefits, view spousal benefit estimates, and compare retirement benefit estimates at different ages or dates when you want to start receiving benefits. Already receiving benefits? Use your account to change your address, set up or change direct deposit, get a proof of income letter, and more. In most states, you can also request a replacement Social Security card. Save time. Go online. Open a My Social Security account at ssa.gov/myaccount. Social Security, securing today and tomorrow.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
When it comes to vaping, the truth can get clouded. So let's make it clear. Vaping is not safe for kids, teens, or young adults. It's just not.
Because vaping can put microscopic particles into your lungs.
And dangerous things like metals and volatile organic compounds into your body.
And nicotine, the same highly addictive substance found in regular cigarettes.
Nicotine can harm a person's brain development through their mid-20s.
Affecting learning, memory, attention, and impulse control, and priming the brain for other addictions.
Vaping products also come in kid-friendly flavors that can make them appealing to youth.
And many kids also use other drugs, like marijuana, in vaping devices.
With appealing flavors, high nicotine levels, and lots of promotion on social media,
many kids think vaping is harmless, but it's not.
So talk to your kids about the risks of vaping, because when you talk, they hear you.
For more information, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson. Of course, housing remains a top issue in Utah as too much housing remains unaffordable to far too many people. This is particularly an issue for our military veterans who are finding themselves priced out of real estate, close by bases in particular. Utah lawmakers have a solution. Representative Blake Moore has introduced the Low-Income Housing for Defense Communities Act and actually joins us on the line from our nation's capital. Representative Moore, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Boyd. Always happy to be on.
All right, let's dive right in. I know you got a few things going on back there in D.C. today, and I love that in the midst of all the things that we look at and say, man, there's dysfunction, and then also you say, oh, look, and then there's something really important that's going on. Tell us about this new piece of legislation dealing with housing, especially around those defense communities.
That is exactly how I would have phrased it. There's always, there's never a dull moment back here, and there's always so much turmoil over the simple things. But these are the moments that you get to kind of pull up and say, look, we have a really, really good idea that we've vetted, and we're ready to launch it. And let's see what environment exists to see if this could ever, get signed into law. And a really simple explanation of it is, Mayor Shepard, Mark Shepard from Clearfield City, which is adjacent to Hill Air Force Base. When I was trying to get on Ways and Means, he and I ran against each other in the very first election for Congress 2020. Once that election played out, we were immediately partners, representing our districts, working with the people that matter. And he's just one of those really good experiences that exist when in the political world there's so much vitriol and nonsense that goes on between folks. And this is one of those cases where he brought me in for an idea that he had. And he cares deeply about our military community. And he said, look, we got airmen and women that they're bunking up triple, quadruple people to an apartment that should only house two. That's causing a strain on parking and congestion. There's just not enough supply for everything. Now, that's the case with our entire housing issue, but in particular, he said, why come up with a solution that would leverage the LIHTC housing credits, so the tax credits that exist for developing low-income housing, and you could incentivize it and geolocate it near major military bases. And by doing so, we're going to incentivize proper development of good quality housing that military families would be able to afford, and the developers and the investors and the community surrounding it will all benefit as well. It's like a triple win, and you would only do these near military housing because that's a dire need for housing.
Right.
And all of a sudden, this idea that he had, he brought me in. He's like, hey, you're going to be on Ways and Means soon. I love that. And military, this is the only place that could be, that this bill could go through. So he presented the idea, and boy, I loved the idea when I first heard it. Then I vetted it with my team and was like, hey, what's the likelihood? And now we just actually introduced the bill after everything that we went through to make sure that the scoring was done on it and that all of the T's are dotted and I's are crossed. I know I said that back. So,
we'll take I's and T's in any direction you can give them, Congressman. This is such an important conversation, and I just want our listeners to just step back for a second. So, one, I want to go back to the origin of this. That this is someone you ran against. So this is you would put this under the category of political rival in past tense, and yet you came together around a set of principles, an idea, and some good public policy. And you work together, you work it through with the staff, and now you've got it introduced. That is the model that I hope we continue to see more of in our nation's capital. But your leadership on this, I think, is so important. So give us, just in our last minute or so here, Congressman, give us a look forward on this. Now that you've got it ready to be introduced and move forward, what's the next step? What are you looking for moving forward in the path?
Yeah, looking forward, again, thank you for highlighting that. A local idea, a good idea that we were able to bubble up, vet, and run it. It's introduced, and we have a couple of unique options. Now, there's going to be a lot of tax activity next year. I sit on a tax team that was preparing work related to community development and working families, because next year the Tax Cut and Jobs Act from 2017 expires, and so there'll be a lot of movement in the Ways and Means Committee on tax-related issues. And so our job, the work we've done so far, introduce it and then make sure the committee and my leadership within the committee knows how much of a priority we want to make on this. Put that priority list as high as we possibly can, and then see if we can get it through the legislative process. It's not a major change.
Yeah.
It's not a burden on anything. It doesn't have like a high deficit scoring apparatus. Like it's got a lot of good potential. So we just got to go through the long slog of now legislative, which in some cases is the start of the game.
Yeah.
But where it came from is a truly unique, neat experience.
That's fantastic, and we appreciate you taking out some time on a very busy day in our nation's capital. We know you got a few things to do, like pass some spending to keep that all rolling and the lights on back there, and we're confident that will all happen. But this is an important one, and it's one that started here locally, could impact military families nationally. And I think it's one that we need to highlight more of these kinds of things. Representative Blake Moore, 1st Congressional District, and showing a little bit of what leadership looks like and sounds like in our nation's capital. Thanks so much for carving out some time for us today.
Thank you, Boyd.
All right, that's Representative Blake Moore. This is an important piece of legislation addressing military housing affordability. And I love the fact that it started with someone who ran against him to be the congressman. And yet they put all that aside. They got to a good principle. They got to a good policy. They got it introduced and now continue to march it forward. That's how it's supposed to be done. That's the job. And hopefully we can continue to do that and have more people that are willing to step up and do that hard work and heavy lifting. We'll step aside for some bottom of the hour news. More Inside Sources coming up next. Stick around.
It's 1:31 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top local story this hour. You'll hear some more big booms today. The Tooele Army Depot North Area Range is detonating more old munitions, and that'll be going on until 4 o'clock. Finding a place to rent is getting harder. A new report finds fewer housing units were built this year than last. KSL News Radio's Heather Kelly has more.
The latest competitive rental report from Rent Cafe it reveals Salt Lake City built almost half the amount of rentals as it did in 2023. That means there are 9 people vying for each available place to live this summer. The data also finds all areas of the country have fewer places to rent and higher competition among renters.
Rent Cafe finds Chicago and Miami are the most competitive markets, with 20 people fighting for each available rental unit. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. The state of Arkansas has added a statue of Johnny Cash to the U.S. Capitol, the first musician to be honored that way. The bronze sculpture shows the man in black with his eyes cast downward and a guitar on his back. Your money at this moment. The Dow Jones average up on the day now 40 points. The NASDAQ is up 77 right now. And our KSL weather. Just a lovely week ahead, even if it is getting warmer. That's next. KSL News Time, 1:32.
You know what's great about KSL's traffic coverage? Trained traffic reporters and real listeners.
Trading information and making the commute safer and faster for everyone.
Every 10 minutes on the 9s, we have you covered on KSL News Radio.
Transform your old, outdated kitchen with Half Price Granite. For a limited time, Half Price Granite is offering special pricing starting at $25 per square foot installed. That's lower than most big box stores. These prices are some of the lowest around. Granite, quartz, marble, and quartzite, all starting at $25 per square foot installed. Call 801-486-1700 or visit halfpricegranite.com. Half Price Granite, affordable luxury.
Sometimes the hardest thing is the first step to any journey. Going to sotaweightloss.com today, SOTA weightloss.com, and clicking on that button that says request a nutritionist callback. I worked with a nutritionist and still am. I mean, I've been in maintenance for 2.5 years. I lost 34 pounds, but you'll talk to somebody like Shawnee.
I love working here at Sota Weight Loss because I get to see every individual that I work with's lives change on a day-to-day basis. They go from not being able to play with their grandkids to playing with them, walking with them, getting off medications they've been on for decades, and it just makes everything fulfilling in life.
Everybody's looking for the quick fix, and some people out there are going for pills or they're going for injections. The bad news on the backside of that is you usually end up gaining that weight back plus some. Soda will make a difference. They'll help you keep that weight off. Find out how they can help you or somebody in your family. Just go to sodaweightloss.com, spelled SOTA, and it stands for State of the Art.
Y'all want to hear about the AARP auto insurance program from the Hartford? Well, if you're age 50 or over, you can save hundreds when you switch. Are you ready for some exclusive discounts too? Phone's in the air now. We're going to sign you up, baby. Go to visithartfordauto.com today for your free quote.
When you're with the Hartford, the Bucks got your back. Provided by Hartford Fire Insurance Company, not AARP or its affiliates. Individual savings vary. The Hartford pays a royalty fee to AARP, which is used for external purposes. For information and restrictions, go to thehartford.com.
Whether you own a local business or a global one, you're always looking for ways to position your operation to create opportunities and move on them faster. With Bank of America, you get access to experts, award-winning insights, and business solutions so powerful, you'll make every move matter, locally and globally. Visit bankofamerica.com/banking for business to learn more. What would you like the power to do? Copyright 2024 Bank of America N.A.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. And here is Ricky Meese.
And it is emergency traffic on northbound I-15 in Weber County, where we've had a crash at 5600 South and Roy. At one point, it was blocking right lanes of traffic. Looks like they've been able to open up all lanes of traffic, and we're starting to see cars moving again, but we still have delays into Clearfield. Right now, Utah Symphony, Utah Opera tickets are $25 with shows like Cirque Cinema, Sweeney Todd, and Pirates of the Caribbean. There's something for everyone, and they have tickets to give away. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Look for warm and sunny weather in the valleys of the Wasatch Front this week. Today's high 82 and up to 90 tomorrow. Right now, we're looking at 77 degrees with sunny skies. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com, Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio. Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson. In this presidential election cycle, undecided voters and their pieces are something we're going to get to when we get to 2:35 today. We're going to talk about the change factor in this particular segment and how change is hard and scary for a lot of us. And sometimes seeing different communities, we devolve into caricatures and all of the uncertainty, and often that leads us to bad places and spaces like contempt. And so we have to do it a little bit different. Well, there's an organization that is doing just that and focusing on young people to make it happen. To me, this is a beautiful conversation about thinking again about what we think we know, about people we don't know. And there was a fantastic piece in Deseret.com today by Maria Manzos talking about how teens are uniting America one hometown at a time. And we're really thrilled to have join us on the program today David McCullough, co-founder and CEO of the American Exchange Project. And David, welcome to the program.
Hey, Boyd, how are you? Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
We are doing great, and I love what you are doing. And I want you to describe it for our listeners, because I think we need to do this not just with young people around the country. We need to do this with everybody around the country.
I couldn't agree more, and thank you for saying that. Maybe say it louder. Just kidding. So we are a new nonprofit. It's called the American Exchange Project, and in short, we run a study abroad program. But rather than sending high school students to study abroad in another country, we send them to another town in America that is politically, socioeconomically, and culturally very different from the one that they're growing up in. So this year, we've had kids from West Jordan and American Fork travel to places like Palo Alto, California, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and vice versa. And the whole idea is to get to know a hometown that's very different from your own, maybe even immerse yourself in a bubble that's a little different from the bubble you grew up in, and become friends with people from different walks of life, different races, ethnicities, political backgrounds, socioeconomic classes. And the hope is that if we can do that at a large enough scale, it might help bring together a country that is dividing against itself and forgetting what civil discourse looks like.
Yeah, I love that. And I am one of those who firmly believes we're not nearly as divided as we think we are, or as many in the political class want us to believe we are. And I love that you're doing this with young people in particular, because once they have that connection, then the next time they see a caricature of someone from a red state or a blue state, or from a wealthy part of the country or a rural part of the country, they're going to stop and pause and say, wait a minute, that was not my experience. What they're serving up there. And to me, that's all the difference.
Well, we can never forget that there's great profit to be made in turning people against each other. It's a long trend of human tactic to tribalize against the other. We should unite because we are not those guys, and we need to go get those guys. We need to be against them. But another great motivating factor in humanity is the aspiration toward progress and the collective, the larger whole, the formation of a more perfect union, which is a familiar line to all us Americans. And the reality for most young people is that, it's not that they necessarily have negative caricatures of people who are different from them so much as they don't know it all. We sent a young boy from the Bronx to a fishing village in the northern part of Massachusetts, town called Gloucester, Mass. And when I met him there, and he'd immigrated from Africa as an early teen, I said, what do you think? What do you think of Gloucester? He said, well, it's amazing. I said, oh, really? Why is that? He said, well, there are people here. I said, what do you mean? He said, I thought the world was kind of New York and Connecticut and the rest was just trees. And I thought, you think of that like New Yorker cover, the world according to a New Yorker, and it's the city and there's a little Eiffel Tower on the other side of the globe, and that's really it. Well, we all kind of live that way. We all kind of have that view of the world, and we're all in our own ways, in a way that we don't ever mean to be mean or egocentric, but we all can be a little self-centered, a little cloistered in our corners. And if you allow a young person's first impression of the other, right? If that boy's first impression of fishermen or people from Massachusetts was something negative, a caricature they saw on the news or on social media, an impression that they or a point or a viewpoint they heard from that wacky uncle at the Thanksgiving dinner table, then you're setting yourself behind and you're setting yourself up for failure. In other words, they're going to get the first impression somewhere. But if that first impression is one that is not just sympathetic but authentic, but real, then you're in essence educating young people. And I think what you're ultimately doing is you're blunting the edge of prejudice. Yes. You're making it much harder for them to not necessarily agree with them on everything, but hate them or say derogatory things about their character, not just debate the point they might have.
Yeah, this is such a crucial thing. This is something we try to do every day, is to just get people to think again about what they think they know and think again about who they know. I love the way you go about this. And I have to tell you, I had an interesting moment this morning. I was writing a column this morning and included an experience that I had with your grandfather, historian David McCullough. And I was a chief of staff in the Senate, and we had a conversation in the Library of Congress, and just talked about how history is not about dates and locations and events, but an unending and inexhaustible river of principles and ideas to explore. And you've done that in an amazing way. This is a family legacy that I love. It. And part of your origin story, David, was your own experience getting out of your own bubble and recognizing that this great American dream that you were part of wasn't necessarily getting to some of your peers.
Yeah, that's exactly right. My grandfather was motivated by a lot of things, but one of them was to evoke the American identity and the American story through forgotten people from the past. And growing up, I had the same interest and still do, but more for folks for the living, people who are around today. And so in the summer after my junior year of college, I borrowed my mom's Mazda CX-9, our family's kid hauler, and hit the road. I drove 7,100 miles across the country, and my aim was to research the effects of poverty on education in some of our nation's poorest communities. But rather than talking to professors or experts or big think kind of folks, I wanted to talk to folks in the middle of it, which was a tried and true tradition in American intellectual thought, going out, hitting the road, and talking to the folk. And in doing that, And in doing that in the summer of 2016, while the Trump and Clinton campaigns were also making their way around the country, I had what was not just the most profound educational experience of my life, but a deeply transformational experience that's absolutely set me on the course to where I am now. And I made some good friends, which was part of the fun too.
Oh, I love that. That is such a powerful thing. The project is called the American Exchange Project. It's giving teenagers across the country the opportunity to go somewhere that isn't like what they're used to, get them out of the bubble, learn to understand and live with and be around people who look different, think different, believe different, worship different. And that is the beginning of better days for our nation. Again, David McCullough is the co-founder and CEO of the American Exchange Project. You need to check that out. This is the kind of exchange, more than we need foreign exchange students, we need American exchange students. David, thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to having you back because I want to continue this conversation. There's a lot left to go and a lot of lives to impact along the way. Thanks for joining us today.
Deal. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic insight there from David McCullough, and an important exchange. Think about that kind of exchange. Getting into different places and spaces would do wonder for all of us. We'll step aside for a quick break. We'll be back with more Inside Sources coming up next.
Whenever I talk about Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, it is so easy to simply focus on the steaks. After all, it's in the name. But Ruth's Chris Steakhouse is also famous for their other dishes as well. Other entrees like seafood and poultry. I love it too. At certain times of the year, they'll have specialty dishes, and they will be prepared to perfection. And then those side dishes that are just legendary. When Dee and I eat at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, this is what we almost always do. We love the asparagus, and we love the potatoes au gratin. And don't forget to leave room for those desserts. They are just off the charts. We're so fortunate, and especially this time of year, driving up the canyon to Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. We have 2 locations, one in Hotel Park City, and then with all the great events happening in downtown Salt Lake City, they're at 275 Southwest Temple. Your dining experience is waiting at Ruth's Chris.
You trust us for news and information in your car. Now trust us at home. KSL News Radio has you covered, keeping you informed on the latest breaking news, weather, traffic, sports, and more. Listen on your Amazon Echo or Google Home device. Just say, Alexa, open KSL News Radio. Or listen on the KSL News Radio Listen app. Text the word app to 57500. KSL News Radio. We have you covered.
It's a blitz. The quarterback scrambles, looking for an open receiver. Nope, sacked. That's how you stop a big play. Now imagine your business as the quarterback. You need a strong team to support you. Les Olson IT is your offensive line, protecting your business and helping you score big. We're talking touchdowns for your bottom line. Visit lesolsonit.com for a free technology assessment. Let's make some big plays together.
Les Olson IT.
This Friday from 10 to 1, the movie show comes to Sound Sleep Medical. But first, take the time to learn about a better night's rest. Sound Sleep Medical delivers oral appliance therapy that treats sleep apnea without the use of CPAP machines. They're professionally fit, warranted, and covered by most major medical insurance. End the days of a poor night's sleep. Sound Sleep Medical will help. Call Sound Sleep Medical at 801-716-8672 for details. Sound Sleep Medical. Attention commercial property managers and business owners. Say snowplow 3 times and who shows up? GoPave Utah. Clearing snow faster than you can say sandworms. That's GoPaveUtah.com.
Victor deployed for the first time to Afghanistan in 2003. At 4 in the morning, my phone rang. They said, I regret to inform you that your husband was wounded in action. Victor sustained a moderate traumatic brain injury. I was doing school full-time, and I was also then caring for Victor. One of the most important elements of caregiving is taking care of yourself. I just didn't want to forget that I also had goals and that I also had a life. What I did is I challenged Victor to meet me halfway. There are almost 6 million military and veteran caregivers across the nation. We have our own journey, and we can fulfill that journey at the same time that we are helping our loved one.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for a free military veterans guide to navigate your caregiving journey and better care for your loved one and yourself. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Do you worry about how much someone drinks?
Do you feel angry or depressed most of the time? Do you feel neglected or unloved?
Do you feel you attract people who tend to be compulsive or abusive?
Do you have money problems because of someone else's drinking?
Are you afraid or embarrassed to bring your friends home?
Do you feel that if the drinker loved you, she or he would stop drinking?
If you answered yes to any of these questions, you are not alone.
More than half of all adults have a family history of alcoholism.
Not everyone trapped by alcohol is an alcoholic.
Families and friends are suffering too.
Al-Anon
and Alateen can help. Call 1-866-200-0223 or visit alanon.org/help.
Jeff Kaplan. I'm energized by breaking news. First of all, because it's right now, and second of all, because in many cases the audience needs to know. There's no more important service that we can provide, and I find it critically important to get more details to the audience as quickly as possible. There's nothing more energizing than that for me. Not at all. The most important thing we do is breaking news. I am gratified that so many people listen to me every afternoon on KSL, but what they don't know is that there are so many people behind the scenes making it happen, checking on the traffic, answering the phones, making the calls, talking to the newsmakers. They're out in the street, into the field to get the raw information, and then putting it all together so that I can sit in front of a microphone and be a source of information every afternoon. But there are so many people who make it happen. That's what you don't know.
Ride Home with Jeff Kaplan, weekdays 3 to 7 on KSL News Radio.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, Salt Lake City is one of the toughest markets in the country to find a place to rent. Second, Utah has Brigham Young in the U.S. Capitol Statuary Hall. Arkansas now has Johnny Cash. And third, Salt Lake County voters will have to decide whether to renew the ZAP tax in this election. It funds the zoo, recreation centers, and many other organizations. And right now, 77 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
In every presidential election cycle, particularly this election cycle, undecided voters are going to play a big part in determining who moves into the Oval Office, as well as what happens up and down the ballot in our election season 2024. But I want to get us a little bit different angle today. I want us to think again about what we think we know when it comes to undecided voters. Sometimes they get a bad rap. Sometimes it's like, oh, they're just disconnected or they're lazy, or how in the world can they not know who they're going to vote for at this stage of the game? And so we want to get underneath the headline and think again about what we think we know. We're really thrilled to have Gall Beckerman, a staff writer at The Atlantic, is also the author most recently of The Quiet Before on the unexpected origins of radical ideas. Love that. And has a great piece in The Atlantic called Let Us Now Praise Undecided Voters, which is exactly what I think we want to do. And Gall, welcome to the program.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
So as we dive into this, your piece in The Atlantic is awesome. People need to check that out at theatlantic.com and kind of walk us through your exploration into this wonderful world of the undecided voter.
I came to this topic with the same thoughts that I think a lot of people have about undecided voters, which is that these must be people who are really not paying attention. And then I started reading the way that they were actually talking about the election and all the different articles that have appeared lately about undecided voters. And it occurred to me that these weren't actually uninformed people. They were speaking with quite a bit of knowledge, or as much knowledge as any of us have, about the different issues that matter to them, about the two candidates. And listening very closely, I suddenly realized, they're actually, maybe many of these people are just indecisive people. They just have a hard time deciding.
Yeah, and you also pointed out in your piece one thing that I think is really interesting that I think we might need a little more of for everybody else. And you talk about it in the context of that group of people that we often refer to as the maximizers. So explain that for us, for those who aren't familiar with the term maximizer, but then let's apply it to this presidential election cycle.
So a maximizer is somebody who is searching for the perfect and not content with the good enough, right? And we sort of know this from other parts of our lives. It is that person, who's, needs to get a new couch or a car, let's say, and just cannot pull the trigger, will just kind of search endlessly and gather more and more information. So in the context of indecisive voters, this makes a lot of sense for a certain type of person. They are unlike most of us sort of making the decision on which presidential candidate to support based on or one big sort of factor that we're taking into consideration. They just start accumulating more and more information. They want to know exactly, what is, Kamala Harris's plan for lowering inflation? What exactly does Trump think about, gun control? And this accumulation of information actually becomes a kind of stalling mechanism for them.
Yeah, and so as they go down that path, and I think for a lot of us, you look at them and say, really, there's only two choices in this one. But as you said, they start to accumulate all of the different scenarios and possibilities. But I think that's also instructive because a vote is always a series of trade-offs. And it's a chance for us to prioritize our priorities in terms of, well, I think this issue is more important than that, or this policy is more important than that. But it's also an opportunity to express something. And I think some of these undecided want to make sure they're expressing the right thing, but that may be leading them down some of those delay tactics.
Yeah, there is the way you put it was very, very well said, and it kind of points to one of the conclusions I came to while working on this piece was, the undecided voter is in many ways the ideal voter because it's somebody who is actually taking very seriously how much their vote counts. They're not taking for granted that they belong to one tribe or another who has to vote in a particular way. They actually want to really understand how these various issues relate to their lives. And so I sort of concluded with a feeling of, let's not just disparage these people. Let's actually think about whether or not there's certain aspects of their deliberation, which makes us feel a little bit crazy at the moment, the closer we get to November, that is praiseworthy. Now, you could say that this particular election, a lot of people feel like this in America, is almost nearly, existential. A lot of both candidates are saying this, right? And so all of this sort of hair splitting that that the undecideds are engaged in feels sort of irrelevant. And that's a valid point of view. It's, happens to be sort of my point of view. But I still think that there is something that would be lost if we didn't have these sort of undecided voters. And, the trend line points towards fewer and fewer of them every election cycle.
Yeah, and I loved how you pointed that out in your piece, Gull, that they are becoming very rare. These undecided voters, which is really sad to me because it means everyone else is just kind of set and checking it based on long-held things or what they think they know about the other side, which is a lot of the cause for the division we experience in the country. But the thing about these undecideds to me that I thought you pointed out so powerfully is that they remain curious and they continue to explore possibilities, and I actually think that's a good thing.
Yeah, one of the social scientists I talked to put it this way. He said that they have intellectual humility, which means that you sort of know what you don't know, and you have to seek out answers. Now, to just kind of add a little bit of nuance to this, there were people who understood the deliberating of these indecisive people as being sort of a little bit narrow in the sense that they're thinking. A lot of them are thinking about what's good for me, what's good for my family, what will turn my business around. And that might, that doesn't sound like a citizen. That sounds like a consumer to me, and something that I guess I personally would want people to turn, kind of thinking I'd want people to turn away from in an election, where you are sort of thinking about what's best for the country. But I think generally the attitude of questioning, not taking things for granted, sort of informing yourself, really looking at all the various issues. We have to see that as a good thing.
Yeah, no question about it. And I love the intellectual humility. I think that's a a crucial virtue and skill that we've got to re-enthrone in our society. And even if that leads us to places and spaces that we're not really comfortable in, like the idea of writing in a name or voting for a third party. We get served up the obvious. It's an either or. It's a binary choice. It's this or that, which is all part of the fake fights and false choices we regularly get served up by politicians. But I love this idea of someone who is undecided, who may in the end say, after I've weighed everything and explored everything, both these candidates came up lacking, and so I'm going to choose different. And even though people will tell me I'm throwing my vote away, I am making an expression. I am sending a message by what I do. And again, I think that might be part of a better solution as well. Gall Beckerman, staff writer at The Atlantic, author of The Quiet Before on the unexpected origins of radical ideas. I think this is a radical idea around celebrating those blessed, wonderful. It's my conversation with Gall Beckerman, and important conversation. We'll step aside for top of the hour news. More Inside Sources coming up next.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour. A man in custody now after being arrested on 4 different offenses this morning, including aggravated assault on a police officer. KSL News Radio's Alessandra Gurr has details.
Paperwork from the Utah County Sheriff's Office shows that Juan Morelos is being charged with 4 offenses, including aggravated assault, criminal trespassing, and felony commercial obstruction. The report states Morelos was placed in the Spanish Fork Hospital, where he became aggressive and agitated towards staff members, refusing to leave the hospital and threatening police officers with a rock the size of a baseball.
The report also says Morelos yelled toward the officers, saying that one day he would kill them. Salt Lake County voters will be deciding if the ZAP tax should be renewed in this election. This is a sales tax that takes a small portion from purchases in the county and uses it for cultural organizations, rec centers, and parks. ZAP stands for Zoo, Arts, and Parks, first approved in 1996. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. President Biden sounded an upbeat note this morning in his address to the UN General Assembly, talking about the progress he's seen since he became a U.S. Senator back in the 1970s. But he also talked about the current wars in Ukraine and the Middle East, calling for unity and an end to the fighting. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up now on the day, 83 points, while the NASDAQ is up just over 100. And our KSL weather, beautiful sunny days, but it will get up to the 90s. That's next. KSL News Time 202.
We hope you have the right app on your phone for news. You probably have dozens.
But the KSL News Radio app, well, it makes our live stream super easy.
Plus, our talk shows are right there as podcast for your workday.
That's the app for KSL News Radio.
Are you within 5 years of filing for Social Security? Get this. 96% of Americans forfeit an average of $111,000 in Social Security income. And it's all because they filed for their benefits at the wrong time. Learn how you could avoid this with a free, customized Social Security analysis from Boss Retirement Solutions, 5-time winners of the Best of State Award. If you've saved more than $200,000 for retirement and have not filed for Social Security, schedule your free analysis now by calling 801-896-9622. You know, for some people, filing for Social Security early could result in more net income in retirement. Discover how you could get the most income from Social Security. Call 801-896-9622. 801-896-9622.
Advisory services offered through Boss Retirement Advisors, an SEC-registered investment advisory firm. Insurance products and services offered through Boss Retirement Solutions.
Hi, it's Julie, inviting you to come to Logan for Funky Fall Fun. Let me tell you about 2 huge festivals in one weekend, September 27th and 28th. Bring your whole herd to the Cache Valley Cheese and Dairy Festival Friday and Saturday. Free samples, live music, kids activities, food trucks, and a tri-tip dinner Friday night. Workshops on gourmet cheese tasting and chocolate tasting, making charcuterie boards, how to crack a giant wheel of cheese, and more. Saturday only is the second annual Center Street Giant Pumpkin Festival. These ain't your mama's pumpkins. They tip the scales at more than 1,600 pounds. Watch professional carvers whittle away 300-pound pumpkins. Family scavenger hunt, activities for kids, pumpkin and harvest-featured foods, a beer garden. Music, dancing, more than 100 vendors and more. The drive is gorgeous and the temperatures are perfect. Get a hotel and get moving to Logan for Funky Fall Fun. ExploreLogan.com/fall. ExploreLogan.com/fall.
At Fisher Investments, we may seem like other money managers, but we're different.
What makes you so different than the rest of us?
We ensure clients receive unparalleled service at every step of the relationship.
Tell me more.
Our investment counselors focus on service over sales, prioritizing clients' needs.
How do you make money?
We don't sell any commission-based products. We have a simple management fee based on the value of our client's portfolio. So we do better when our clients do better.
What about client portfolios?
We get to know each client, their finances, family, health, lifestyle, and more, and then we tailor a portfolio based on their specific goals and needs.
Your clients really come first then, huh?
Yes, we make them a top priority. Our goal is helping them achieve a comfortable retirement.
Wow, maybe we are different.
At Fisher Investments, we're clearly different. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com.
Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
We do have good speeds. Once again, northbound I-15 going into Weber County from an earlier crash. But Salt Lake City PD is wrapping up an accident at 7th North, 1600 West. Celebrate Taco Tuesday the tasty way at Cafe Rio. Handmade tortillas bring the vibes, slow braised meats bring the punch, and 12 tasty toppings bring the party. Starting at just $2.49. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Warm and sunny in the valleys of the Wasatch Front this week. Today's high 82, up to 90 tomorrow. And right now, we're looking at 79 degrees under sunny skies. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com for Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
There were cheers and jeers today, as in a very bold move. Vice President Kamala Harris has now called for an end to the Senate filibuster. She wants to end the filibuster to make way for passage of federal legislation codifying abortion protections. The strategic shift raises a lot of intriguing questions beyond that particular issue alone. And that's what we want to get underneath today. So we're not going to talk about health care and abortion rights and rights to life. We're going to talk about what it means for a president or someone running to be in the highest office of the land to say that filibuster thing, we ought to get rid of it. What does that mean? Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
So in big news today on the campaign front, Vice President Kamala Harris said she backs ending the filibuster in order to pass some of the abortion rights legislation codifying that. And we're going to set that issue aside. So regardless of where you fall on Roe v. Wade and codifying that, reintroducing that, all of those things, I want you to set that aside for a minute. We're going to think again about what we think we know when it comes to the filibuster. And as always, we turn to our good friend James Wallner, Senior Fellow at the R Street Institute. And James, welcome back to the show.
Well, thanks for having me.
So let's dive into this. So the filibuster, of course, is this requirement to get to 60 votes to be able to advance most legislation in the Senate. And so obviously that's a higher hurdle than just getting to 51, just getting to that majority rule. Just walk us through why that is in the Senate and what we should be thinking about when we have presidents of either party saying, yeah, it'd be nice if we could get rid of that.
Well, the first thing is to distinguish between what the filibuster is and how it operates on paper and how it operates in practice. And there, I think there's a huge gulf, right? The filibuster is not a veto, and it doesn't give 41 senators the ability to just say no regardless. What the filibuster is the opportunity to speak and to debate and to potentially offer amendments. But it's the ability to stand up and to speak without having the floor in the Senate taken from you. That's what the filibuster is. And there's no way to end one, or at least there hasn't been up until 1917, when the Senate adopted a rule called the cloture rule, which allowed for a supermajority of senators to say, look, we think this is really important. I know we have this tradition of unlimited debate. You still want to speak, but we're going to vote on this bill now. And because it was so extraordinary, the idea was that if you had a supermajority of senators who said, this is really important, so you need to sit down now and stop talking, then you could do it. And that's called invoking cloture. And so when we talk about the filibuster today, in practice, it means that you have to get 60 votes in order to pass legislation. But in theory and in the rules, that's not how the filibuster operates at all.
That's such an important piece of the puzzle as we look at this. And so when we hear, especially presidents, and we're hearing this obviously today from Vice President Harris. We heard it during the Trump administration. There were things that he wanted to get done that were getting bogged down in the Senate, and kind of made that same thing of, let's just get rid of it. Why is it part of the institution in terms of slowing things down or just preventing a lot of chaos rather than a lot of progress?
Right. Well, the Senate, its job, its number one job, is to check the House. Right. We have two Congresses, not one. We have a House and a Senate. And the Senate, to do that effectively, needs to operate differently from the House. And one of the ways that the Senate, throughout its history, has operated differently, in part because it's a smaller body, and senators are used to having autonomy and the ability to engage in the process on behalf of their constituents, is this tradition of unlimited debate. But what we've increasingly seen in both administrations, in Congress is controlled by both political parties. This is not unique to one or the other party, is an impatience with the constitutional structures that we have that have kept our republic through, in good times and in bad, have kept it kind of above water. Right? And those structures frustrate, not necessarily action, because our Constitution was written and ratified to empower a national government. I think that's important to point out. But it was written to make it safe to give that government more power. And increasingly, what we see is that people are not they're not happy when there is even a momentary blip or a momentary obstacle to something that they want to happen right now and right here. And we know I'm not perfect. I don't know about you, but if you give me absolute power and I get to just decide everything right away, chances are I'm going to make a lot of mistakes. And it's through that debate and through that argument and through that give and take, both inside the Senate and between the Senate and the House, that creates, I think, wiser and better legislation in the end.
Yeah, and that is the goal. And that's what we got to remind everyone, is that the goal is wiser, better, more restrained form of government, and good governance, I think, is the real key there. But when we have this, if we had the House and the Senate both able to just do things very swiftly, to me that ends up creating a much more uncertainty, because if you're having a cycle every 2 years where you'll have every member of the House and a third of the senators up for re-election, somehow that seems to me it would lead to a lot of swinging back and forth and a lot of uncertainty and instability in the country.
Which is precisely one of the things that James Madison points out in his essay on the vices of the political system of the United States, written prior to the Federal Convention in 1787, and meant to help him convince his colleagues that we need to change how we do business, where you had unrestrained majorities in the state legislatures who were coming in and after an election would pass whole new rules, and they would change rules, and it was unpredictable, and it's not good for anybody. And so that was a key thing they were hoping to avoid. And I would also add that this way of doing business and being not content with the give and take of legislative deliberation, one, it makes compromise harder to get, because compromise emerges out of that struggle. It's not something we have until we try first to win, and then the other side tries to stop us, and then we say, okay, well, you can take 30, I'll take 70%. Stuff like that. It makes compromise harder to get, and it also puts a lot of emphasis on our elections, where we begin to litigate policy not in between elections, but only in elections. And I would suggest that while elections are fabulous things for holding our elected officials accountable and for rewarding those that we want to reward and for sending those we want to send home, they're not the best for writing policy.
Yeah, absolutely. Great perspective, as always, James Wallner. Thanks for carving out some time for us today, going down the line of the filibuster. As always, James, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, that's James Wallner, Senior Fellow at the R Street Institute. And interesting, just flashing up on the screen, Senator Joe Manchin has said he won't endorse Kamala Harris for president because of her vow to gut the filibuster. So he is someone who is on that side of we need to maintain it because of what it forces us to do as a nation. It forces us to have conversations. It forces us to debate. It forces us to make the case. And it forces us to get to compromise to wiser, better, more restrained kind of governing. And whether you're a Democrat or a Republican or anything in between or everything in between, that leads to a better country for all of us. We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. An improbable path to 4-0.
Sione Moa. He wanted Moa, and he kept going all the way in for 6. Run of the year.
This week, BYU is back on the road for another Big 12 showdown. BYU Baylor pregame starts at 8 in the morning with kickoff at 10 on Utah's legacy home for the Cougars, KSL News Radio.
Paid for by government. Did you hear? A secret hoard of 1932 $10 gold Indian coins have been found. These gorgeous 1932 gold coins are as bright and shiny as the day they were struck, and less than 200 of these gold coins are available. Coin experts are calling the secret U.S. gold coin discovery a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and you can own a piece of the hoard. When you call, you are guaranteed a 1932 dated gold coin featuring Lady Liberty with an Indian war headdress and a majestic eagle. With limited availability, you must call now. These 1932 dated gold coins are still in uncirculated condition with brilliant luster. That is 92 years of history you can hold in your hand. To learn more, call 1-800-495-6468. Call now and you'll receive a free bonus over a $55 value free with every order. Call 1-800-495-6468 now to secure your 1932 $10 gold Indian coins before they sell out. Don't wait. You must act fast. Call now.
When it comes to our homes, stains in your carpet can be really frustrating. It can be easy to think you need harsh chemicals or detergents to get them out, but these always leave behind soapy residue, which ends up attracting more dirt to the area. That's why you should trust Zero-Res to get out tough stains and regularly clean your surfaces. Zero-Res uses ZR water to deeply clean carpets without any icky residue. Right now, mention KSL and get 3 rooms of carpet cleaning for just $109. Plus 20% off air duct cleaning. Book now at zerores.com.
The Management Minute is a service of the MBA program in the John M. Huntsman School of Business at Utah State University. I'm Professor Scott Hammond. Heads up, the parents called to their Little League player who was counting daisies in the outfield. Heads up, the coach called to his players, hoping that they would see and respond to what was about to happen in the game. When we say heads up, we're saying pay attention to the details of your job. But we're also saying pay attention to what's happening in the game. All of us are charged with doing micro details, but also seeing the bigger picture and reacting to macro surprises and helping others. If you do just the details, heads up. If you see just the big picture, heads up too. Learn more about framing your work in an MBA program from Utah State University. Go to utahstatemba.com. That's utahstatemba.com. I'm Scott Hammond. Hope to see you in one of our classes.
Tim Jr. here from RGS Exteriors. Did you know that we offer 3 distinct styles of gutter protection? Each one meant to handle a specific leaf problem. You might not even know there are different styles of gutter protection, but there are. And if you pick the wrong one, it could be a huge waste of money. Now, the big gutter guard companies won't tell you this. They try to sell you a one-size-fits-all gutter guard. And it could be completely wrong for the amount and types of trees and leaves you have. Not RGS Exteriors. We understand which kind of leaf problem needs which kind of gutter guard. We'll do an in-depth evaluation to assess the types, locations, and numbers of trees in your yard. Based on that data, we match your home to the right gutter guard. So don't risk wasting money on the wrong gutter protection. For a free evaluation and estimate, call RGS Exteriors at 801-280-3110 or visit rgsexteriors.com. That's 801-280-3110 or rgsexteriors.com.
Any Hour Services free furnace sale is going on right now. If you haven't scheduled your free estimate yet, what are you waiting for? Call Any Hour Services today or schedule online at anyhourservices.com.
Matthew.
Huh? Oh, sorry.
It's okay. I just need you to listen to me.
I know that a lot of times, Mom, it might not seem like I'm listening to you, but I am. I hear you. And what you say really does matter to me.
I mean, let's be honest. No kid likes rules, but I get why we have them. I hear you, and I know it's because you care.
All the talks we've had over the years, including what you've told me about not using alcohol and other drugs, they stick with me. And believe it or not, they really do make a difference, especially at times that matter most.
Hey, want a drink?
No thanks, I'm good. So thank you, Dad, for talking and preparing me for what's ahead.
Thanks, Mom, for never giving up and always being my biggest fan.
Thank you for letting me know what you expect, so I can try to meet your expectations.
Thank you for talking.
For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
I'm Andrew Saul, Commissioner of Social Security. Beware of telephone scammers pretending to be government employees. Real Social Security employees will never threaten you. Callers threatening you with arrest or other legal action and demanding money are not from us. If you receive a call like this, hang up, do not provide them with any form of payment or information. Report the call at oig.ssa.gov.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, a man who threatened police with a rock at the hospital in Spanish Fork was arrested early this morning. Second, President Biden noted progress made around the world in his final speech to the UN General Assembly today, as well as calling for an end to the fighting in Gaza. And third, it wasn't a shark attacking a swimmer off the California coast. It was a sea lion. The man will be okay. 78 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Well, as everybody seems to recognize, the 2024 election is shaping up to be a very tight race. Both parties are vying to get those crucial votes so they can take control of the White House. The Trump campaign's very unconventional get-out-the-vote strategy, which is sort of a model in outsourcing. Involves partnering with a lot of outside group. It's raised some eyebrows, sparked some questions, and the impact is to be determined. That's an interesting component to all of this, and we want to get inside that just a little bit in terms of what that actually means and why it might matter in a hotly contested race. Brett Samuels, of course, is White House reporter for The Hill, covering the Biden administration as well as the Trump campaign. And Brett, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me back, Boyd.
All right, so first just kind of get us under the hood a little bit in terms of a traditional get-out-the-vote strategy, how that typically plays out, and then this very interesting mode of outsourcing that the Trump campaign is given a try this time around.
Yeah, so typically, I guess what we've seen in the past is these get-out-the-vote operations that are sort of from top down. For example, the RNC, the Republican National Committee, would oversee the get-out-the-vote operations. Everything would flow through the RNC. The RNC would try and maximize the number of voters that they make contact with in battleground states, in urban areas, suburban areas, rural areas, et cetera. But what we're seeing from the Trump campaign this cycle is there was a ruling from the Federal Elections Commission that allows for closer coordination between campaigns and outside groups. And the Trump campaign is trying to take advantage of that by basically leaning on some of these outside groups to essentially be their folks on the ground. These outside groups are the ones who are out knocking on doors, trying to and then, tries and uses. Oh, sorry.
I think we lost you there for a second, Brett.
Yeah, sorry about that.
There we go.
Yeah. So anyway, as I was saying, the Trump campaign is leaning on these outside groups to sort of be their canvassers, be their boots on the ground, knock on doors. And essentially they're relying on these outside groups in a way that's not been done before. Instead of the Trump campaign being the ones that pays for canvassers, pays for operatives to be on the ground, making direct contact with some of these more persuadable voters.
And so give us some of the how that might be an advantage and why it's got a lot of Republicans wringing their hands in terms of how this actually plays out in November.
Yeah, so the argument from the Trump campaign, from Republicans who are supportive of this, is essentially twofold. One, there's the efficiency component. The Trump campaign would say that, these outside groups are paying the door knockers, they're paying the folks on the ground to get the same data, the same contacts that the Trump campaign would otherwise be paying for. So that frees up money that the Trump campaign can use on advertising, other investments for the campaign. The other aspect that they would argue is that this is a more effective way to reach actually persuadable voters. So they're willing to, skip knocking on the door of someone who their data says is already likely to vote for the former president. They focus more on persuadable voters, folks who are low propensity voters, which means that they may not be as likely to go cast a ballot. So that's the case for this strategy. The case against it is that it's untested. You're relying on outside groups who maybe are not familiar or don't have the experience with sort of a complex get out the vote operation, especially in an election, like you said at the top, it's going to be razor close. It's going to come down to turnout and who can turn out the most folks who maybe are on the fence or who are less likely to cast a ballot.
Yeah, so interesting. And kind of compare and contrast that. Obviously, there's a lot of machinery going on the Democratic side in terms of the Harris campaign. Of course, a lot of that was inherited from the Biden campaign, but a lot of that's been built over a series of cycles, really going back to the Obama administration. But give us a sense in terms of what that means, what they like to tout, and where they think they have an advantage.
Yeah, certainly. It was sort of funny because when President Biden was atop the ticket, and polls showed him trailing, former President Trump showed him struggling to gain traction with a lot of voters. One of the things his campaign liked to point to was that they had success, getting volunteers, getting field offices open in battleground states. They like to talk about sort of this behind the scenes process, that they had the advantage in terms of getting out the vote, knocking on doors, reaching voters, et cetera. So as you said, the Harris campaign has inherited that. They like to tout sort of the dozens of field offices they have. They say they have 50 offices across Pennsylvania to coordinate volunteers, coordinate knocking on doors. The Harris campaign has seen a surge in volunteers since she replaced Biden atop the ticket. So certainly there's enthusiasm there to help with the effort to get out the vote. But at the end of the day, Republicans would say that the proof is in the pudding, and the folks who are out, working in field offices, working on the ground, those are not the folks casting the ballots. So the proof will be in the pudding, I guess, as they say, in November, with which strategy is more effective.
Yeah, this is going to be so interesting to see, because this will project forward into a lot of elections yet to come in terms of which is the more efficient. If you have those official offices, I've always found that if you have an office, people like to stay in it or sit in it, as opposed to go out and do the hard work, the knocking of the door, especially if it's really hot or really cold or rainy. And so as you look at this play out, give me something else that you're kind of looking at as we march forward, looking at the operational structure of both of these campaigns, and anything else you're keeping your mind or your eye on in terms of things that might be an advantage or a disadvantage to each of these campaigns.
Yeah, certainly. As we've been saying all along, it's going to be a really close election. So I think one of the things that I'll be looking for is to see which of these operations is more effective at turning out what both sides call low propensity voters, which basically means folks who are maybe in rural areas or maybe younger voters, folks who are less likely to go out and cast a ballot. Which campaign is better at getting those voters either to the polls on election day or for early voting, or getting them to cast a mail ballot. That's going to be really key, obviously, in battleground states like Georgia, like Pennsylvania, like Wisconsin, that are only going to be decided by, maybe 10, 15, 20,000 votes. So I'll certainly be watching that. Another interesting trend line, I think, is The gender gap will be interesting. I think obviously women, Vice President Harris has consolidated support among women, and polling has shown she's doing really well with women. We've seen the former president try to kind of directly appeal to women with maybe mixed results, you could say. So I'll be interested to see sort of the gender gap when the election does take place, because polling has shown, depending on which poll you're looking at, a really sizable gap in terms of women supporting one candidate, men supporting another candidate. I'll be interested to see sort of what the divide is when all is said and done.
Yeah, great insight as always. Brett Samuels, White House reporter for The Hill, covers the Biden administration as well as the Trump campaign. And Brett, as always, we appreciate you making time for us. Great perspective. Look forward to having you back soon.
Thanks.
All right, we'll step aside for some bottom of the hour news. Come back with some more inside sources. We're going to take a look at an extraordinary speech that took place down on the campus of Brigham Young University today. David French made an address. We'll break it down, get some insight and some perspective when we come back. Stick around.
Good afternoon, 2:29 at KSL News Radio. I'm Kira Hoffelmeyer. KSL's top local story this hour: Utah's kindergartners are showing improvements in reading proficiency. Julia Clark is the Literacy and Early Learning Coordinator for the State Board of Education. She says this builds a strong foundation.
That we hope to see that roll up into first and second and third grade as these students progress through their grade levels.
93 schools across 22 districts have high-performing kindergartner readers. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. The U.S. Justice Department has sued Visa, saying it monopolizes the debit card market, leading to higher prices. Attorney General Merrick Garland also says Visa has increased fees on banks and businesses thanks to its monopoly.
Visa collects more than $7 billion each year in network fees on U.S. debit transactions, with a significant part of that sum resulting from Visa's illegal conduct.
In a statement, Visa called the lawsuit meritless. You'll hear some more big booms today. The Tooele Army Depot North Range area will be detonating more equipment until about 4 p.m. The markets are closed today. The Dow finished up 83 points to 42,208. The S&P finished up 14. The Nasdaq up 100. Coming up, time for the Wednesday warm-up. KSL weather is next. KSL News Time, 2:30.
It's a priority for us at this station to bring you all sides of a story and to talk about the news fairly, completely.
Get all the facts and be really aware. Utah's Morning News with us, Tim and Amanda.
Weekday mornings 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
My wife and I always loved doing everything together. Jiu-jitsu, kayaking, and intimacy was always on point. It was around my early 30s when I noticed a downward trend. Watching a lot of TV, putting on weight, and just full of self-doubt. I had tried another men's clinic with disappointing results. It's the personalized treatment I receive at Revive Men's Health that has been the complete game changer for me. I've got my energy and motivation back, I'm feeling stronger than I did in my 20s, and it made me a much better husband to my wife.
I'm Eric Ramos, healthcare provider at Revive Men's Health. If you are always feeling tired or moody, have a difficult time sleeping, or decreased libido, you may be suffering from low testosterone.
Book your free T-check and exam at Revive Men's Health, Salt Lake City. Call 801-263-7777. That's 801-263-7777. Or visit ReviveMen'sHealth.com.
Mom and Dad used to argue about everything, especially about Dad's drinking. It drove me crazy. It got so bad, I couldn't do my homework. I couldn't concentrate. I absolutely refused to let any of my friends come to our house for any reason. I would have been humiliated if anyone found out how much my dad drank and how loud my mom screamed at him. My family went from totally crazy to quiet, calm, and even peaceful. The only thing that happened is my mom started going to Al-Anon family groups. Her relationship with my dad really changed. I asked Mom if she would take me to her Al-Anon meetings or to Alateen. I wanted to see if I could have a better relationship with my dad. I'm sure glad I did. Is someone's drinking troubling you? You might be surprised at what you can learn in an Al-Anon or Alateen family group from people just like you. Call 1-888-4-ALANON or go to alanon.org.
Tim and Amanda.
One of the big differences, I think, between reading a story online and hearing it from us, Tim, is that, you and I are allowed to share a reaction. We need to be able to say, what in the world were they thinking? So that people listening will know. We feel it too. When we read a story that sounds ridiculous, we're right with you. It sounds ridiculous.
Well, we get caught up, I'm sure just like our listeners do sometimes, in death scrolling on social media. And fact-checking it on your own is tough. The great thing about tuning in every morning and starting your morning with us on KSL is you can count on the fact that when that information comes out of the radio in your direction, it comes from reliable sources.
It's already been fact-checked.
Right. And that's not always easy when you're getting it online. Finding who wrote it, when was it written, has it been updated with the current facts of the day that change sometimes minute to minute, not just day to day.
Utah's Morning News between 5 and 9 on KSL News Radio.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. We've got Ricky Meese with us.
And we have a nasty situation on I-80. We have a rolled semi that has caught on fire eastbound to I-80. It's after Bangalore Highway and near I-215's West Belt. They're calling it about 2500 West. You're going to see a lot of black smoke in the area, and because the vehicle is on fire, it may have sparked a grass fire in that same area. We know it's blocking right lanes of traffic, and we're seeing delays going eastbound I-80 from Bangalore to I-215's West Belt. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Fall weather for the next week, but we get pretty close to some record highs. 90 tomorrow and nearly up there for the rest of the week. Right now, 79 degrees and some sunshine in Salt Lake City. I'm Kira Hoffelmeyer from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Earlier today, New York Times columnist David French delivered an address to students at Brigham Young University. So we want to dig in a little bit in terms of what that message was. What do you do as a political columnist in the midst of a presidential election that's getting very close? We're about 40 days out today. And what does that mean to a group of college students as we approach an election? As always, David French thinks deeply, has a broad vision, and always has some invitations in terms of what we all ought to do about what we hear. It was definitely a message worth hearing by everyone, and not just students at Brigham Young University. I think it was for every age, every class, and every political affiliation as well. You may recall David French toyed with the idea of running for president in 2016 and chose not to do that. He's been a great writer and thinker for many years now, and someone that a lot of us look to in terms of just great, thoughtful, deep analysis and exploration. Curious, radically curious is a good term. So he began his speech with a story involving his friends. His speech was a plea. It was a roadmap on how we actually find ourselves again as Americans. He identified some of the underlying factors that are driving so much of the political division in our country. More importantly, he found a better way to find our way forward through what we talked about on the program yesterday, friendship and connection. So to those who've been discouraged by the direction of much of the rhetoric in our nation's politics and want a better way forward, David French has a speech for you that was delivered down at BYU today. So the central theme of David French's speech confronts the hatred, the contempt that has seeped into our politics and into our culture, and laid out a roadmap to overcome the current divides.
In the United States of America, if you talk about what we're dealing with, it is a crisis of affection, it is a crisis of regard, and it is an epidemic of outright hatred in the United States. If you're going to talk about why is it that our politics has gone so crazy, why is it that our culture, we always seem to be at odds with each other, why is it that we have things like cancel culture that have arisen, and I can sum it up in one word. Hatred. Now, I don't want you to think that this is something brand new. This has been building for a while.
That crisis of regard, I love that phrase. We're going to come back to that during the course of the week because I think he's nailed it. The crisis of regard. Think about that a little bit. We'll come back to that tomorrow. But it is part of what underpins and is that white-hot piston of hate in our society. He went on to identify some of the underlying factors driving division in America, including what is called the great sort. Listen carefully to this. When people start dividing themselves, sifting themselves, not just by geography and location, but on a host of other things across the country.
Several decades ago, it became apparent that Americans were wanting to move and live around people of like mind. Now, this is completely normal stuff. It's actually very understandable why you would want to do this. It's easier, right, to live around people that share your values. It's nice. You don't have to feel like you're constantly countercultural. But there's a negative effect of this, and it's, if you remember nothing that I say today, like nothing, remember this concept because it explains so much of the United States of America. And it's called the law of group polarization. The law of group polarization. And what this means is that when people of like mind gather, they tend to become more extreme.
So this is an interesting one to think through. So I agree with David that often what happens is we kind of self-sift. Because as he described it, it's nice to be around people who actually agree with you. It's nice if you're living in a neighborhood and you don't always have to be the bad parent or the countercultural parent. So living next to people who believe a little bit more like you or think a little bit more like you or want to raise their kids a little bit more like you takes a little bit of the pressure off. But there's also a downside to that. And I think it's twofold. One, if we are just around those that we think with, as David pointed out, we become more extreme and things start to get pushed out a little bit further. That's not a healthy thing. That's not a good thing. It also prevents, especially our young people, from really knowing and understanding. You've heard me say it on this program before. A man is not honest just because he hasn't had a chance to lie. We talk about living in your own bubble on social media or in your own community. And if you're in a bubble and you've bubble wrapped your children in a bubble, that's a double bubble. We won't say that 10 times on the air today. That's a tricky one. But if we're all double bubble wrapped, then we become less curious. We're more likely to fall into the trap of contempt, where we see people as not just wrong, but wrong and evil. So we become more extreme, like David French pointed out. And so having that opportunity to have interaction with people who look different, live different, think different, worship different than you do is a good thing. It's a healthy thing, both in terms of exposure to other ideas and other ways of living and thinking and approaching challenges and opportunities. But it's also an important thing in terms of understanding what you really believe and what really matters most to you. And so it isn't a surprise that if you are all in the room and no one disagrees or everyone has the same thought, that's rarely healthy, and it rarely leads to good decision-making. I've seen this in businesses. I've seen this in the United States Senate. I've seen it in all kinds of organizations. You get everybody in the room and everybody agrees, and so everybody pushes just a little bit further, so the thinking becomes a little bit more extreme, and then everybody says, oh, it's a brilliant idea, and everybody buys in. Nobody dissents. Nobody has an objection. Nobody calls to question if this is good or right or just, or have we included or thought of other things, and bad decisions get made. I know some members of Congress that if everybody agreed on something around a table, they'd go out in the hall and find somebody who didn't. I know some Republicans who would go down the hall and find some Democrats to say, hey, we all agree on this particular policy thing we're going to put forward. Will you come challenge us on it? Just so they could hear and have some pushback to the idea. That's a healthy thing. The sad thing is that in our culture and in our society, we've made anyone who pushes back against us the enemy. We've made them the bad guys and the bad girls. Because how dare they? Because we're right. And we've decided that we're right. And so I think David French has picked on a really important part of the equation in all of this. This great sorting, while it is a natural thing that happens, usually by geography, but it's also happening online. It's happening in our social media feeds. The algorithms are adding to the great sort because the algorithm is now sorting for you to make sure you get more and more of exactly the same thing and exactly the same people who think exactly the same way as you do. That doesn't end well. It doesn't end well for individuals or families. It doesn't end well for communities or countries. We have to get out of that. David French also pinpointed some of the sickness that's driving the division in our politics and that lack of connection to each other.
The problems in our politics are a symptom of an underlying disease. And what we're beginning to understand that underlying disease is a lack of connection. It's a lack of connection. And so here is what I want to get at today. What is the solution to our crazy hate-filled politics? It isn't one party winning and another party losing. It isn't your favorite politician winning and your most hated politician losing. It is actually replacing alienization and loneliness with connection and love. That is the reason behind the reason for our politics is our lack of connection.
The reason for the reason behind the division in our politics is that lack of connection that prevents us from having the real conversations. Well, we're going to stay with this conversation. Again, David French spoke down at Brigham Young University earlier today. He's a New York Times columnist, great thinker. When we come back, we're going to pick up on some of the solutions and how do we get past this disconnection into interconnection and what will actually lead the nation forward. Stick around. We'll be right back.
At Fisher Investments, we may seem like other money managers, but we're different.
Are you really that different than the rest of us?
We are. As a fiduciary, we always focus on what's best for our clients.
What services do you offer besides investing?
We have a team of specialists in financial planning, estate planning, and more.
Your clients rely on you for all that?
Yes, we ensure clients receive unparalleled service at every step of the relationship.
Okay, but you still sell commission-based products, right?
No, because we believe that's a conflict of interest. We prioritize service over sales goals.
So, then how do your fees work?
We have a simple and transparent fee that's a percentage of our clients' portfolios. So we do better when our clients do better.
Wow, we're more different than I thought.
At Fisher Investments, we're clearly different. Learn more at fisherinvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
This week's movie show brought to you by Sound Sleep Medical. Get a free sleep screening and a free sleep consultation by tuning in on Friday morning. Sound Sleep Medical with 7 locations in Utah.
Emergency traffic on KSL News Radio brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. We have a crash that's blocking traffic and causing heavy delays. It's actually a semi that rolled and then caught on fire. There was a lot of black smoke in the area. This is eastbound I-80 prior to I-215's belt route. If you're going to be traveling that direction, you will see the delays passing Bangor Highway. And right now, we believe there are still 2 right lanes of traffic that are blocked. It may be a spot you want to consider avoiding and using an alternate route. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
If you need a new roof, there's a reason IWC Roofing is the #1 residential roofing contractor in Utah. IWC has been replacing roofs for 27 years. They are professionals. You don't get some janky subcontractor fiddling around up there. You get experienced IWC employees on your roof, and they finish most jobs in a single day. They're in, they're out, and they power wash your driveway just to say thank you. Now you're wondering about the price. After all, IWC is one of the few Owens Corning Platinum certified contractors in the entire state, but they offer value pricing, and right now, take advantage of their fall special. $2,000 off your quote. And of course, they'll work with you on financing, so call IWC Roofing, the highest rated roofing contractor in Utah. Plus, $2,000 off right now. Call IWC Roofing, 801-232-5690. That's 801-232-5690, or go to IWCRoofingUtah.com.
This is Derek Overstreet of the New Millennium Group and host of Stop Working and Start Living Radio. If you're close to or in retirement and you don't have a tax plan, call us right now, 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370. Listen, our country's been spending like never before, and the tax bill is coming soon. If you need an income tax strategy and a financial plan that will get you through the rest of your life, give my team a call, 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370. If you want an investment plan that allows you to keep more of your gains and pay less taxes, give us a call, 888-999-6370. My team specializes in the type of plan that will get you retired 3 to 5 years sooner than you thought possible. So, get a no-cost tax analysis by calling 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370. My team is standing by now.
Celebrate Taco Tuesday the tasty way at Cafe Rio. Handmade tortillas bring the vibes. Slow braised meats bring the punch. And 12 tasty toppings bring the party. Starting at just $2.49.
At Social Security, we are always thinking of ways to save you time and make things easier. That's why we created My Social Security. Opening a My Social Security account gives you secure access to your personal record and interactive tools tailored for you. You can see if you are eligible to receive benefits, view spousal benefit estimates, and compare retirement benefit estimates at different ages or dates when you want to start receiving benefits. Already receiving benefits? Use your account to change your address, set up or change direct deposit, get a proof of income letter, and more. In most states, you can also request a replacement Social Security card. Save time. Go online. Open a My Social Security account at ssa.gov/myaccount. Social Security, securing today and tomorrow.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Victor deployed for the first time to Afghanistan in 2003. At 4 in the morning, my phone rang. They said, "I regret to inform you that your husband was wounded in action." Victor sustained a moderate traumatic brain injury. I was doing school full-time, and I was also then caring for Victor. One of the most important elements of caregiving is taking care of yourself. I just didn't want to forget that I also had goals and that I also had a life. What I did is I challenged Victor to meet me halfway. There are almost 6 million military and veteran caregivers across the nation. We have our own journey, and we can fulfill that journey at the same time that we are helping our loved one.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for a free military veterans guide to navigate your caregiving journey and better care for your loved one and yourself. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
I'm Dave Cawley, investigative journalist and host of the podcast Cold. In October of 1985, a woman named Cherie Warren left work at a busy Salt Lake City office
to meet her estranged husband at a downtown auto dealership.
She never made it home. Cherie's car surfaced weeks later in Las Vegas.
In the parking lot of a hotel casino.
No one knows how it got there.
Strange. It was strange.
Both Cherie's estranged husband and her boyfriend raised suspicion for investigators.
I kind of thought that he might have done something.
But no arrests were ever made. In Cold Season 3, we dig into double lives, make new connections in the case, and examine the difficulty raised by reasonable doubt.
We want answers just as much as anyone else.
They have creeps like that now too, so nothing's changed.
That's the new Cold Season 3, The Search for Cherie. Now available anywhere you get your podcasts.
Mom and Dad used to argue about everything, especially about Dad's drinking. My family went from totally crazy to quiet, calm, and even peaceful when Mom started going to Al-Anon family groups. I wanted a better relationship with Dad, so I asked Mom if she would take me to her Al-Anon meetings or to Alateen. I'm sure glad I did. If someone's drinking troubling you, you might be surprised at what you can learn in an Al-Anon or Alateen family group from people just like you. Call 1-888-4-ALANON or go to alanon.org.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Kira Hoffelmeyer. First, new data from the Utah State Board of Education shows Utah kindergartners are doing better on literacy tests when they're in all-day kindergarten. Second, the U.S. Justice Department sued Visa for allegedly monopolizing the debit card market. The DOJ says it's led to higher prices. Third, a new judge will now oversee the murder trial for the deaths of 2 Eagle Mountain toddlers. Kent Barlow now has a new attorney, and a new judge will oversee the trial sometime next year. 79 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today, as it always is. We're going to stay with the conversation. Today down at Brigham Young University, New York Times columnist David French delivered an amazing address, challenging address, a thinking address to everyone, not just the students. This was for every age, every class, every political persuasion. As we talked about in the last segment, we talked about some of the things that we're dealing with when it comes to hate in this country and some of the underlying factors, including that lack of connection and what David French called the crisis of regard. I think that is a fascinating term. If you think of regard as a feeling of respect and affection or esteem, and if we're in a crisis, an absence of feelings of respect or affection or esteem, that doesn't lead to good places for us. I think it's an interesting term. That's worth digging into and thinking again about as you go through your day today. So I want to stay with David French's conversation with those down at BYU today and some of the solutions that he got to. In addition to looking at those underlying factors, again, a lot of the things that are driving our political polarization, and I remain convinced that we're much more politically polarized than we are actually polarized. I think we assume we're a lot more polarized people to people than we actually are. But most of that happens because of disconnection. So David French talked about those factors contributing to the path of disconnection and how it can radicalize a lot of folks, especially politically.
And what do we know? What do we know what happens to human beings when they lose that connection with each other? Here's number one. An individual who is isolated and alone, that is a formula for loneliness, for despair, and and many times, a formula for self-destructive behavior. So if you're looking, there's a personal despair aspect of it. Then there is also an aspect of it that is radicalizing politically. Believe it or not, loneliness radicalizes people politically. We know that isolation breeds anger. Isolation breeds attraction to authoritarian movements. Why is that? Because it gives people a purpose and it can give them also a community.
So interesting that leads to a community. It's one of the interesting things that I have dealt with leadership positions over the years as I've coached and consulted, worked with all kinds of leaders from business executives to political folks. Isolation is an enemy. So often you have someone who is a representative, a senator, a governor, a CEO, a C-suite member of an executive team, and they get more and more isolated. And it's not healthy. It leads to destructive behavior. It leads to a lot of uncertainty and questioning, but it also leads to just some of that radicalization in terms of what you believe, because you're isolated for the most part. And then when you're with people who are telling you exactly what you want to hear. So you're not really connecting with them. They're just validating where your brain has been in isolation. Isolated leaders are rarely good leaders. Isolated leaders rarely make great decisions or lead with authenticity and inspire people to do things that are difficult and hard and that will create unity. So isolation is the enemy, not just for leaders, for all of us. And for all our interconnectedness on an interconnected world, I think it actually isolates us more and more because we're not having human connection. We're becoming disconnected for that. So the people we think are our friends are really just people who like our stuff on social media. And that's not a connection. So you'll actually feel more isolated, which, as David French pointed out, is destructive and leads to bad choices and to radicalization and a host of other problems. Now, near the end of his speech, David gave the mission to those listening to begin healing the nation. And as David is often wont to do, went to history, quoted George Washington about the great potential of our nation.
Here's our mission: to reach out to somebody else with fairness, with kindness, with humility, because not any one of us knows everything. To act justly, to love kindness, and to walk humbly before the Lord your God. To what end? To what end? So that my neighbor, who I love, can feel like they belong in this place. So act justly, love kindness, walk humbly. Why? So that every man can live under his own vine, his own fig tree, and no one will make him afraid. Thank you very much.
That's David French, New York Times columnist, that was here in the Beehive State today speaking at BYU. And what a way to end, talking about all of these challenges that we face in our society, and that the answers are pretty simple in terms of the mission and the path forward. Fairness, kindness, humility. And if you heard right there at the end, you can hear the echoes of Washington's farewell to the nation, which was not just a farewell to the nation, it was a call to the nation to reach out, as David French said, to neighbor, regardless of how they look, think, live, believe, or worship, and invite them to a space where they can feel that they belong. That's what we, the people, do together. Well, that wraps it up for us on Inside Sources today here on KSL News Radio. I'm Boyd Matheson. Thanks for joining us. And as always, as you go out into the world today, make sure you see something that inspires, say something that uplifts, and do something that makes a difference.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio,
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Good afternoon, 3 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Jeff Kaplan. 81 degrees, KSL's top story. Thousands of frontline workers at U of U Health want more money, better scheduling, and a place to park their cars on campus. They presented their demands to the U, and KSL News Radio's Don Brinkerhoff joins us live from South Salt Lake. Don?
Jeff, these workers are members of Utah Healthcare Workers United, and they claim they've gathered more than 2,000 signatures asking that the hospitals and clinics, number one, address income disparities with comparable institutions, number two, increase parental leave, paid time off, and sick days, and number three, provide affordable employee parking. Groups holding a news conference right now claiming that so far their demands have been ignored. Reporting live from Utah Workers Center in South Salt Lake, Don Brinkerhoff, KSL News Radio.
We've reached out to U of U Health for comment, and we're still waiting for a response. The Justice Department is taking on Visa. Maria Chaleos is live at the KSL National News Desk.
Jeff, the Fed's filing an antitrust lawsuit against Visa, claiming the company has an illegal monopoly over debit card transactions.
We allege Visa is a monopolist in the debit transaction markets and inflicting often hidden but significant harm on American consumers and businesses.
Attorney General Merrick Garland says Visa has pressured competitors out of the debit card space and has increased fees on banks and businesses. In a statement, Visa says the lawsuit is without merit. U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders is calling out Big Pharma over the skyrocketing cost of weight loss drugs. Sanders pressing Novo Nordisk CEO on why Americans pay so much more than people in other countries.
Treat the American people the same way that you treat people all over the world. Stop ripping us off.
Americans are paying up to $1,350 a month for Wegovy compared to just $265 in Canada. Novo Nordisk says those